I think that we're born spiritual creatures, which is a deep, abiding love of other humans, of nature, a oneness with nature and with other people, a patience, accepting of everyone and everything. And we often have something that chases that out of us. You know, plant medicine has given me a lot more compassion.
We start to see our own mortality. Death is coming. And we look back and like, what did I learn from this amazing lesson? Because I do believe whatever energy we've created here, we are taking that experience to the next experience, whatever that is, whatever energy burst I am.
I only realized in the last 2 years that I've been sexist as fuck. I was in a mushroom ceremony 2 weeks later, and I saw these amazing lights. I'd never seen anything like it, so it was extraordinary. But then I realized that it was familiar, that I knew exactly what it was. In this space where we go, this mystical state of consciousness, I'm like, how can this be that I've never seen anything this amazing, yet I know what this is? And then I realized I was looking at my wife and that I know her very well, yet I don't know her at all. Sexist as fuck. I haven't seen her in many ways. And, you know, what I kind of realized is that she's Johnny Carson and I'm Ed McMahon. I thought it was the other way around.
This is Infants on Thrones.
Baby steps.
You want someone to preach to you?
The philosophies of men.
I like magical toys.
You want religion, do you?
Mingled with humor.
I don't believe in them.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with humor.
We are evolving.
Baby steps.
You can buy anything in this world of money.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 708. Magic Mushrooms, Utah Senator Steve Urquhart, and the Divine Assembly, Part 1. Now today I'm joined once again by Christine Stenquist, who I interviewed a few months ago about her incredible life story and her experience working for the legalization of medical cannabis in Utah. In that interview, Christine talked about the role that psychedelics like magic mushrooms have recently played in helping her find a greater peace of mind. She also mentioned her friend and fellow crusader, former Utah Senator Steve Urquhart, who recently started a psilocybin church in Utah. So over the next 3 episodes, Christine and I will be talking with Steve about his story, how he rediscovered his own love for life, his own spirituality, and why he started a new church around a psychedelic sacrament. You're also going to hear a pretty passionate soapbox speech from me at the end of today's episode, so I hope you listen all the way to the end. And we start off by getting Steve's reaction to the interview that I did with Christine. He was driving back from California to Utah and got so emotional that he had to pull over on the side of the road. But don't just take it from me. Take a listen for yourself.
Okay. Is everything all right?
Yeah, I was just telling him about my drive yesterday.
How was it?
Well, I'm telling about the part of just having to pull over and cry.
Oh.
It was contemplative. Let's say it was a contemplative drive.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, what kind of thoughts came into your mind as you were listening?
Well, just my love for Christine, my awe for Christine, and you know, I mean, I see her as just the most amazing political figure of my life, which means, you know, an amazing human and, you know, beautiful soul, courageous, strong. But, you know, her story, I don't know anything like it. You know, I don't know personally Aaron Brockovich. I don't know, you know, and I know Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was fiction. But, you know, I know of her heroism and her strength in fighting. But, you know, I knew some of the details, a lot of the details of her story, but I didn't know, I hadn't heard it laid out like that. And that was just fucked up, fucked up.
If you were going to turn Christine's story into like an Aaron Brockovich type story, I mean, clearly we've got Christine cast in the role of the protagonist, the hero. What's the antagonist? Where is the fucked upness coming from in her story? Who is that?
Well, I think, you know, if I were to tell her story, you know, she beat the Mormon church in Utah, and that's, you know, this is David and Goliath. I mean, this is Christine and Goliath. That's always a big story. And so I think that's the story is, how does someone do this? And part of the way someone does it is they probably haven't walked an easy path to get to that point. I mean, Christine, you know, has been in the depths of hell, has faced just the ugliness of life and survived it. And so, you know, I guess that's a big part of the story. Cause I've looked at Christine, I'm like, how does she do this? How does she? And now I know a little more how and why, because after what she lived, Mormon church isn't going to scare her. You know, a bunch of powerful political insiders aren't going to scare her.
Yeah.
What
do you think as you hear this, Christine? Oh, go ahead and finish your thought, Steve.
I mean, it obviously was a hellacious path to walk, but I think only having walked that path can someone just be that mentally, spiritually, emotionally tough to take down the church on a big one that it threw everything it had at.
So my question to you, Christine, how do you respond when you hear Steve saying that?
Like I told him before, when he describes me, I always say, God, I want to meet that person.
Yeah.
Because when you live your life, you don't, I just didn't think my story was unique. I didn't think it was unique. I think we all have these trials that we go through, and we all are very quiet about the trials we've experienced. And I just was very quiet about kind of the traumas I've experienced that led me to here. And it wasn't till going up against such an entity as powerful as the LDS Church, but also the government, the legislative body, the people that empower in my state, the people that run the health departments, that run our agriculture, like going up against people that I see why and how my path led me through some of those difficult challenges.
Yeah.
I think if I had a blessed life where I didn't have trials and tribulations, I would have given up the first time a legislator said, "Oh, that's nice, little girl." I don't think that's going to happen here in Utah. I would have said, "Oh, you're right," and I've gone back home. But I lived for so long.
You're right, wise Senator Urquhart.
That's right. Those. I did say that to Senator Urquhart. You know, I think that this is the path we were going. Before I got on this call, I was on a call with some allies who were with me, and we were talking about the two entities that are at odds messaging wise in our community. And it is the government and those who want to do incremental steps and those who want to do what's right. And I very much reside in the sphere of those who want to do what's right. I don't think we should trickle bliss and happiness and comfort to people at the profit of corporations and power and those that are pulling the puppet strings. And that's what I saw the LDS Church is trickling happiness. I feel like that with religion, though, is that they trickle out happiness and bliss. If you do this precept, if you do this concept and learn this principle, you will attain this forever after, but only when you die. And I just don't believe that that's the way it should be. I think we should be doing what's right. And that's why I kept fighting. I just kept fighting, that's what's right.
You know, and so back to your question of how to tell the story, I think I'd, show the specifics of Christine beating the Mormon Church, and then just kind of do a massive flashback of what makes someone this courageous, this strong, this tough.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I didn't have those feelings about the church. I like Steve, I'm a convert. And so I was like 10 years old when I came to the church. It was my mother's faith, and she has a history and deep roots in Utah. She was born in Ogden. When I was 10, I was introduced to the church, and I always felt I was spiritual as a kid too. Because I used to ask my dad why we didn't go to church or when we would go, and then he made sure we went. We were always going on the important holidays, Christmas and Easter, but he wasn't a very spiritual guy. And so being the only girl being raised by a cop and my brother, I think I was just more sensitive. So when I was introduced to the church, it appealed to me, this family is forever kind of concept. And I really cleaved to it. I wanted this. And when I moved to Utah and saw kind of up close and personal with the church, it's not the marketing that I was shown as a kid growing up in the 70s and the 80s about what the church looked like. So it changed for me. I started to see the church as a power, another puppet master over people, just like politics was. And that's really when I developed a disdain for the role that they play in people's lives, Yeah.
Well, Steve, Christine mentioned a couple of things. One, that you were a convert, and then she also talked about the spiritual appeal of the teachings of the Mormon Church when she was a convert. And I know that's something that you want to talk about, Steve, is spirituality, and right. I didn't know that you were a convert. So but before we really set up the Mormon Church as the big bad guy, because I know, you're both of you have fought against the Mormon Church in political arenas and won in the state of Utah, which is amazing. But so let's set that up. How did it get to that point? How did you get involved in the Mormon Church to start off with, Steve, and what was your relationship with it?
So Christine and I joined at the same age. I was 10, she was 10, 11.
And you were in Texas?
Yeah, I was in Houston. Mm-hmm. So, my family was dysfunctional, and just really bad at communication, as in not even ever trying. And so, my parents hated each other by the time I was born. My father found the love of his life the year I was born, and it was not my mother. And so they, my parents, they didn't get divorced until I went away to college, because
wow, that's a long
they
time
thought they were
live like that.
Yeah, and he wasn't around much. And my first day of school, my senior year, I got in a fight, and he wanted to parent. And at that point, my brother he had just gone away to college, my just older than me brother. And without that buffer, my dad and I didn't know what to do with each other. And so he wanted to father that day. And I just told him, I said, you know what? I think you need to move. You just need to get out of here. And to his credit, he did.
So let me see if I can get the timeline straight. And by the way, Christine, feel free to jump in at any point. I mean, we're having a free conversation here. You don't need to like be respectful and defer to me or anything.
Okay.
So your parents started having issues. They hated each other when you were born. Your dad found the love of his life. You joined the Mormon church when you were 10. Fill me in on what happened between your mom and dad and your family from age 0 to age 10. Was it your mom that joined the church, your dad that joined the church?
Well,
how did that happen?
I'm first telling you the lack of communication. So they got divorced when I went away to college. And so I came home for Thanksgiving, and I'm like, where's dad? And so my brother, just my brother was there. And so a girlfriend and he was asleep. We came in and we got some warm water, and we were putting his hand in the warm water, just the old method, see if he would pee his bed. And so
you do that to your dad?
No, to my brother.
Oh, to your brother. Okay.
And so he just said, look, take Susan home and come back. And I'm like, whoa, that's pretty grumpy. And he said, just take her home, come back. So, I came back home. I'm like, what? And he said, Mom and Dad got divorced. And when you went away to college. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, yeah, see you in the morning. So that's
were they living in the same house that whole time?
No. I mean, he was episodically there, just kind of. I imagine during this we'll talk about Dad. He's someone who he tried his best. Well, here's the thing. He's a lot like me, or I realized with a lot of my mess as I left the Mormon church, I'm a lot like him. So I didn't understand him until I started to fall apart. And it gave me, plant medicine has given me a lot more compassion for him. He was a mess. I mean, he was a moron genius, and just had a lot of demons. So anyways, that's the backdrop is, they didn't like each other. They were dysfunctional, both, I think, very sad and depressed. And then my 19-year-old brother killed himself when I was 6. And so that really rocked things further. I think my mom crawled in the grave with him in a lot of ways. And so we obviously needed something. They realized that they were failing as parents. And, along came some neighbors who my brother and I really liked. They were athletes. We were athletes, and they were Mormon, and they were stable, and they started inviting us to their church. And the thing that got me is, so I have a photographic memory. And so they had the blazer chart, and we were kind of poor. We didn't have shit. And so they had this beautiful blazer chart with these cool buttons that you could put on it. Like, how do you
just like a felt board that they were telling their missionary stories on?
No, it was the Articles of Faith. And so they were listed.
Oh, yeah.
How old are you, Glenn?
48, almost 49.
Okay.
So I was born in 72.
Yeah.
So I was 65. You should know this. I mean, I think it was still around. It was the blazer chart. So it wasn't even that nice. It was kind of plasticky, but those buttons were cool as anything. And then down at the bottom, you got these little bronze looking things. So I'm like, shit, I want one of these. And I'm like, what do you got to do? And they said, well, you have to memorize these things. I'm like, well, shit, I can memorize. And so, that day I memorized it. I'm like, I want my chart. And so I guess that was it.
I remember in primary having to stand up and recite the Articles of Faith.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that? Yeah. Yeah. So that's what you're referring to, right, Steve?
Yeah, the Articles of Faith. And I
don't remember a blazer chart. I remember things like CTR rings and but in the scouting program, that was kind of the biggest thing, like, oh, I want to get this merit badge, or I want to get this skill award, or, you know, whatever. There were always those kinds of Pavlovian rewards that were being offered.
Yeah.
At that point, so we would go to, like, I guess it was primary. So we go to something with them during the week and play games, and they gave popsicles. And so I'm like, shit, man, you get cool charts and you get popsicles. What could
I like
be
this
better than
church.
this? Yeah. And so anyways, it was, I'm profoundly grateful to the Mormon Church for a lot of things. And one is it I don't know what my life would be like without it, in terms of, you know, as a kid, I needed some stable adults to pay attention to. And there were some really fine adults who did that and cared about me and cared for me. And then just some really great people that I got to grow up with in the church. And so there's so much I like about the church, just, you know, a lot of the social structure and the mooring,
the community.
The stability it provided for me.
Now, I think John DeLynn grew up in Houston, didn't he? Did you know the DeLynns?
I did. I knew of John mostly. He was a little further out in the sticks. He was out in Katy, and I was in Houston. Which now they're connected. I mean, you know, it's just all the sprawl of Houston.
Yeah. So you had, and I guess anytime we talk about the Mormon Church, that there's this term that I learned when I was in graduate school called reification. And reification means that you take an abstract idea and you treat it like it's something that's real, like America. You know?
Right. Thingification. That's what the word means.
Thingification. Yeah. And so, like, when you're talking about the Mormon Church, there's sometimes where we're talking about a set of teachings or a set of beliefs. There's times that we're talking about, like, a local congregation and people there. There's times we're talking about, like, the first presidency and the Quorum of the 12 and that whole power structure. There's times where you're talking about the political stuff. So I don't know how to get around that to be really clear when we're talking about the Mormon, so it doesn't get lumped into this, like, all one big amorphous thing. Is that really even important to make those distinctions? What do you think? When
I did our advocacy here in Utah, because we did bump into this sort of the theocracy, you know, the gospel of the church, and then LDS Inc. And that's what we hashtagged when we dealt with the church in the political arena. I was dealing with LDS Inc.
And you were specifically like Marty Stevens,
the lobbyist. I was dealing, look, if you're going to play in the political arena, you're going to take the shots on the chin like everybody else. And that's how I treated the church. And they wanted to play both sides. They wanted to play, they took their political message to the pulpit, which I felt was wrong and completely inappropriate. When Marty Stevens is at the pulpit, manipulating his position of power to tell people how to vote or not vote on something, especially something that affects people's health. Yeah. And he is not a physician. I felt that was extremely inappropriate. And especially since they don't have the knowledge on this particular issue or topic, I don't think there's anything wrong with them counseling their congregation. But the overstep of having bishops, whether bishops were directly told to organize people to have signatures removed off the ballot initiatives or what, it was happening. And Relief Society lists were being used for political reasons. And to me, that was absolutely inappropriate when the church is dictating how some of this stuff works. So it's, I don't know. Yeah,
there's a lot of influence.
but that was the LD. Then there was the other side that Steve talks about that I feel, and I had a wonderful ward that I grew up in. Elder Bednar was my bishop. He was my stake president. I grew up in Fayetteville, Arkansas during those really my years in Mutual, and where I found some really strong bonds. And like Steve, I don't know where I would have been in high school. if I hadn't had that. I
Yeah.
didn't get caught up in drugs and drinking and being promiscuous, or it just wasn't part of my world. Because I was so dived into the church and what was going on there, and being part of Mutual and going to seminary. Because growing up in the mission field, going to seminary means you woke up and you were at the church at 6:30 in the freaking morning, listening to somebody talk about, the Gospels. So there was a dedication for me as a teen towards the church, that I think I appreciated when I was young, because I think it did keep me a little safe from some situations.
Well, and let's talk about the spirituality part of this too, because Steve, like your appeal to the Mormon Church, you mentioned the charts, the popsicles, but when we talked yesterday, you also said that as a kid you were very spiritual, and so in this unbalanced family environment that you're describing, what was that like?
So, that's something that I look back in retrospect as an adult and recognize my innate spirituality. And what it was at the time was just being human. I think that we're born spiritual creatures, and we often have something that chases that out of us. And for me, I really do think it was the Mormon Church that chased it away.
When you say spiritual, what can you give me some examples so that I can know like what you mean when you're using that word spiritual?
Yeah, it's something that I'm just now starting to reclaim, which is a love, a deep, abiding love of other humans, of nature, a oneness with nature and with other people, a patience for other people. I really was a loving kid, accepting of everyone and everything. Just feeling great compassion for people who are struggling. And then when I'm 10, I adopted a paradigm that I really don't think is very loving, which is interesting because I dig Mormons. I really dig ex-Mormons. And so there clearly are some good teachings there. I think that Mormons really are good people. But the doctrine, it's pretty fucked up. Christine in her podcast talked about learning that her dad was going to hell, and it just was traumatic. And so not only was my dad going to hell because, we joined partially, and, my brothers were going to hell. One brother joined and my mother, and, it was pretty clear teaching then that suicide, you had screwed up your probationary period and he was going to hell. Right. And so, what am I clinging to? I'm in the sea drowning, so I'm clinging to a buoy that's telling me people around me are going to hell. And I'm in Houston. I'm like one of very few Mormon kids in my school growing up, every grade level. Well, they're all going to hell. Well, no, they have the chance in the afterlife, blah, 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 blah. But, everyone around me is on the wrong path. It is such an arrogant, crazy way to look at the world, that everyone around you is wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone around you is screwing up, that the things they're doing are trivial, meaningless. And so, you as humans, we adopt the stuff we hear, the stuff we're taught. And so, I lost that love for everyone and everything around me because it was all wrong, right? Even this earth itself, we're taught that it used to be awesome, but now it's in degraded, fallen state. And, and then the bit about if you're going to go to heaven, if you're going to get your reward, it's not really about being a good person. It's about doing certain things, not doing other things. And, you know, you drink a Dr. Pepper and well, you might not go. And all of these crazy rules and rituals. And so, you know, now dogma to me is anathema. I just can't stand it. Anytime anyone wants to suggest that I live according to their dogma, I just have this visceral reaction against it.
Yeah. Yeah. I find it really ironic. I mean, there's several things about the teachings in the Mormon church that I found ironic, but probably the biggest is the story of the Rameumptom in the Book of Mormon with the Zoramites. You know, I mean, here's this story that was written into a Book of Mormon, probably 1830 by Joseph Smith, about this group of people that used to get up on this, that stand behind a pulpit and that brag about how we are the most chosen of all the people. Thank you, God, for making us better than everybody else around us. And, you know, they're wearing all the best clothes. They're driving all the best cars. I mean, they weren't driving cars back then, but, you know, they would have been. You know, those Zoramites would have been in their Mercedes, and
absolutely,
you know, and you fast forward from 1830 to Salt Lake today. I mean, you've got that Rameumptom in every single chapel, and you've got that attitude that that was one of the things that really turned me off about the Mormon church as well, Steve, is like, I don't want to be conditioned it's not even every Sunday. It's like every single day where I'm reading scriptures and doing prayers, and this to think that I'm better than other people around me. I just got so sick and tired of that. That's hard to get out of. Like once, like recognizing that was in me and going, I don't want that in me anymore. That's a hard one. That's a lifetime battle.
You know, the standard is to be perfect. Humans aren't perfect. So gives us all of this guilt. I think that, you know, it's tough, almost impossible to live the religion and be fully human. I think that it just bashes out the humanity and replaces it with
shame.
Well, with shame and delusion. I mean, it's really, really sad. And I think that's part of the reason why ex-Mormons are just some of my very favorite people, because, okay, we grew up in a cult. We have the commonality of that. And then we, you know, figured out some escape route. But then, you know, to look back, there are different kinds of folks who, different stages, maybe ways people get out of the church. And some of it is they just stop going, but they're still very Mormon in all of their thoughts, all of their thinking. They look for some other form of dogma that they can adhere to. Then there are folks who they still are very worried about what the Mormon church thinks about them, what they're doing. But then, you know, there's a point where there's, for a lot of folks, reflection, where people are like, God, I thought some really crazy things that led me to be bad in a lot of ways. I need to heal. I need to heal people around me. And, you know, I like people who have walked a hard path, and anyone who's done that, they've walked a long and hard path. I mean, I'll give you mine. I only realized in the last 2 years that I've been sexist as fuck. You know, very patriarchal, misogynistic. Now, I would have denied that. I would have pointed to different things. No, what do you mean? But I did not see or value women. And it just feels so awful to admit, but you know, that's a personal failing, but also that's ingrained, that's taught. I mean, the role of men and women in the church, it is not the same. And I think no one would say it's the same. And I think it's clearly fact that one of those roles is superior than the other.
Yeah. In what ways? Can you get a little bit specific about your particular flavor of misogyny?
Yeah, I mean, not too long ago, a couple months ago, I was listing my favorite 10 albums,
Hmm.
my favorite 10 books, they were all men. I mean, all 20 for 20. And so it's just things like that where I'm like, I have nothing against Chrissy Hine. I have nothing, against Stevie Nicks. I have nothing against, but all my attention went to men. I think men have the valuable things to say, the valuable insights. Well, no, that's nothing against women. Do you disagree that these men have wonderful music, wonderful things to say? And so, now I'm just putting forth the effort of, half the books I read, at least half, I want them to be written by women. I won't speak on panels if it's all men. So I'm just trying to see the world better and less misogynistically.
Well, I'm glad we have Christine here, and I didn't even do that on purpose.
No.
Well, I mean, I did it on purpose, but I didn't do it on purpose for that reason.
But it's true what Steve is saying, and I think it's a global thing. Though we don't respect the divine feminine, and we have men have written history that women are here to serve, and that's definitely not. That's not what the divine tells me. That's certainly not what the divine tells me. I also, on the opposite end of that, I am not one who is. I don't hate men. It so often feels like that, in order to be a feminist, that you have to, hate men. And I really don't like the negative narrative because I have 3 sons, and I want my boys to feel loved and cherished by women and respected just as much as I want them to love and cherish and respect women. I think that the sexes need to identify the value in each other. It's so important. It's so important as we move forward in history, that we don't look at one as higher or lower than the other, that as partners that we are. We each bring so much to any given situation.
Yeah.
And so
and so what I'm hearing both of you say really is that we carry around in our minds these attitudes, these ideas, these feelings, whether it's we're better than other people because we have the gospel, or men are better than women because of the priesthood and the patriarchal culture. But these are things that we carry inside of us, and it filters the way that we see the world. It impacts the way that we interact with other people in the world. And what you've done is recognize, oh, I've got this this filter that is my mind that I want to change. I was thinking about it this morning as I was making the bed, and you know how you make the bed and there'll be like a couple of places where there's wrinkles, and so you go over and you smooth it out because you want to have a nice clean. Like, how many of those wrinkles and just like bunched up stuff shit do I have in my mind that is, whether it's misogyny or racism or like anything where I'm thinking bad about myself or bad about other people and it's unfair, and can I just smooth that out so that I don't have that interfering with the way that I see the world and what the world means to me.
Okay, Glenn, on this Zoom call, I will show you your mind. That's it right there. That bed.
But you're laying on the nice made bed, are you not, Steve?
That's the beauty of a hotel room with 2 beds, and I'm staying here 2 nights.
Yeah.
I just put out the do not disturb. I'm working in here, and I'll sleep on this bed tonight.
And let somebody else let the maids make it tomorrow. All right. Yeah.
So here was kind of my path to starting to see women. So Sarah, my wife, and I, we were out with Courtney Clark Kendrick, so C. Jane of blogging fame. So they were talking about something. So I said some smart ass comment, and so Courtney, she looked at me and she said, "Steve, you don't even see me." And then just kept talking with Sarah, and I'm like, "What?" Because I know that Courtney loves me and cares deeply about me, but I had interrupted their conversation with my smart ass, and so she just bluntly, because she is blunt. That's part of the reason I love her. She's like, "Steve, you don't even see me," and I'm like, but I do. You're amazing. You amaze me. But, I just sat with that. I didn't want to argue with her because I could tell the way she said it, I was going to lose that one, that I needed to do some thinking. And then I was in a mushroom ceremony 2 weeks later, and I saw these amazing lights. And it was the most amazing light show I had ever seen. I'd never seen anything like it. So it was extraordinary. But then I realized that it was familiar, that I knew exactly what it was. And so, in this space where we go, this mystical state of consciousness, I'm like, how can this be that I've never seen anything this amazing, yet I know what this is? And then I realized it's Sarah, that I was looking at my wife, and that I know her. I know her very well, yet I don't know her at all. And, this is in the last 2 years. And so, I came home, and someone drove me home, and I was still kind of in the medicine. And so she loves when she gets secondhand smoke when I'm in the medicine. And so what I'll do is I'll just walk in the room and just lay on her, and we'll just be nose to nose while we talk.
Yeah. And
so I'm telling her all of this, and, she's crying because she hasn't felt, she loves me and I treat her well. Well, I guess we'll get into this, other than when I'm cheating behind her back and breaking her heart. But, she knows that I value her, but yet she sees what I hadn't seen, how true this is, that I haven't seen her in many ways. And, what I kind of realized is that she's Johnny Carson and I'm Ed McMahon. I thought it was the other way around.
That's a great.
So it's been super fun to get to know her, and just to, I imagine we're going to get into my deception and all of that. And the thing is, I was afraid of her, and that's because I didn't know her, and was probably treating her like she was my mom or something. And so it's just been awesome to get to know her and to stand independently, autonomously, respect her, that she might have a negative reaction to whatever I'm saying or doing, but I love her. She loves me. Let's figure out what we should do about this. So, that was the start, is CJ and Courtney just bluntly saying, Steve, you don't see me. And I'm like, damn, if right or wrong, for her to think that I'm doing something wrong, I appreciate her courage in telling me that. But then to see, wow, even my own wife, I've been missing the show. That a lot of these revelations I get, that's hard to take. I'm 50. At that time, I'm 54 years old, and I haven't even seen my wife that I've been married to for 30 years. That's a pretty shallow human being.
But Steve and I had talked about this. I think, honestly, this is something that happens to all of us human beings.
Yeah.
We get told what is priority and what is important, and we aren't told and encouraged to have deeper connection with ourselves. Or just so much emphasis, at least for me, was my role in my existence in life was to support my priesthood holder, my husband. That's the whole reason why I was alive. There was no emphasis on my bliss and happiness and what that really means. And when you find that yourself, then you get to really connect with other people. And Steve, I think none of us put our all into those connections because we're dragged from thing to thing. This is important. This is important. You got to pay attention to this, and don't forget about this. And are you being the best dad? Are you being the best employee? Are you being the best coworker? You have all these titles and labels that are put on you that you have expectations to live up to. I can see very easily how human beings get distracted and lost into what is important. I think that's why we grasp towards religion and spirituality and finding that source in us that can ground us again. So we find those deeper connections. Because I think as we age in life, and maybe those who are gifted to understand this younger, we start to see our own mortality. We start to see that death is coming. And we look back and like, what did I learn from this amazing lesson? Because I do believe whatever energy we've created here, we are taking that experience to the next experience, whatever that is, whatever energy burst I am. And we get reflective about this. You know, we get reflective.
Yeah. So playing off of that, back to your question, Glenn, of what does it mean to be spiritual? Yeah. What do I mean when I say it killed my spirituality? It's the word that Christine used there, deeper, depth. I think to be spiritual, it just means that when the universe sings, we vibrate. That we pick up on that vibration, we vibrate with the universe. And obviously, I wasn't vibrating with C. Jane, who is amazing. I wasn't vibrating with my wife, who is tremendous. I wasn't vibrating probably with any woman on the planet. You know, you cannot say you're spiritual if that's the case. And so to me, I think as a kid, I just vibrated with the good in the world around me.
Look for the good in everything.
And then when I was 10 years old, I got the answer key.
Look for the people who will set your soul free.
You know, Mormonism has all the answers. Now, it's completely false. You don't have the answer to anything.
It always seems impossible until it's done.
But I stopped asking questions. I stopped wondering at the world around me because I knew it all. Mm-hmm. I knew the answer.
Look for the good in everyone.
All right, so this is where I want to end part 1 for today. And I want to end this episode a little differently than I end most episodes. I want to share a bit of myself with you here. I want to share with you the way that I see the world. And I want to tell you what I think about the Mormon Church. And I hope that by doing this, I can clear up any confusion in myself or in any of you listeners about me being any kind of apologist for the Mormon Church or for any other kind of harmful institution or ideology. So I was given the unofficial nickname the TBM Whisperer by Brother Jake many years ago on this podcast, because I've often said things like, hang on a second, let's not be so hasty to judge, let's look at this from another perspective, blah, blah, blah. So I want to talk about why I do that, and I want to tell you that I don't do that to be charitable to anyone or anything that does not deserve my charity. I do it to be charitable to myself. Now, I'm not trying to convince any of you here to see things my way. And if anything, I'd like to hear from those of you who listen to what I'm about to say next and feel that I'm terribly, terribly wrong. So, here's where I'm going to start. I am convinced that the only thing that I ever experience in this world, and the only thing that I ever have experienced in this world, is my own mind. My own evolving, changing, malleable, bias-filled, fiction-filled mind. It isn't the same mind that I had when I was 5 years old, but that 5-year-old version is still in there. It isn't the same mind I'll have when I turn 50, but the mind I have right now will become that 50-year-old mind. It's my filter of the world, my filter of reality. I can't experience reality in any other way except through my evolving, changing, malleable, bias-filled, fiction-filled mind. When I look out the window and I see a tree blowing in the wind, what am I seeing? I'm seeing an image created by my brain. As light from the sun bounces off that tree, hits my eyeball, is turned into electronic signals that are rendered into an image inside of my brain. So I'm really only experiencing my own brain. Now, if I was blind, if that mechanism for sight didn't work, I would experience nothing in my brain. If I put on rose-colored glasses, The light would filter through those glasses and the image in my brain would be rose-colored. It's still my brain that I'm seeing, with all of the influences and all of the filters that shape that experience. Are you with me? If I put on Fleetwood Mac's The Dance, which is one of my favorite video concerts of all time, and I close my eyes and I just listen to those 5 brilliant musicians blend their own minds together in the creation of the music that they create.
Listen to the wind blow, watch the sun rise.
What am I hearing?
Running in the shadows,
I'm hearing air molecules bumping into each other, creating invisible shapes and wavelengths of different pitches and frequencies in the air. This hits my eardrum and is turned into electronic signals that my brain translates into the sound I'm hearing. If I was deaf, I wouldn't hear it. If I stuffed cotton balls into my eardrum, the air molecules would filter through those cotton balls and the sound created by my brain would be muted and distorted. It's still my brain that I'm hearing, with all of the influences and all of the filters that are shaping that experience. So, do you see where I'm going with this? My experience of seeing the tree or hearing the music is a result of real things that really exist in the outside world, objective reality, if you will. And that objective reality is filtered through all kinds of different filters to create a subjective experience in my brain. How many filters are there? How many of those filters are unique to only me? My mind has many layers of filters, like the rose-colored glasses or the cotton balls in my ear holes. Many, many layers of filters that turn external objective reality into my own private, unique, subjective experience of that reality. My own thoughts and feelings about what I'm seeing and hearing act as a filter. And so much more that's happening in my subconscious mind as my brain rapidly compares everything it is perceiving right here and now with everything similar it has ever experienced in the past. I'm not consciously aware of my brain doing this. I'm only consciously aware of the conclusions that my brain makes after those comparisons are made. But once again, my conscious experience of the world is what is filtered through my mind. My mind shapes and colors my experience of reality, and I'm really only ever experiencing what my mind is filtering of that reality. I'm really only ever experiencing my own mind. Does that make sense to you? Well, this is how I see the world, at least. So if I'm talking to you about my experience with that tree or with Fleetwood Mac, I'm really only talking to you about the different layers of filters within my own mind. Okay, so what does that mean about the Mormon Church? It means that the Mormon Church, whatever that is, just like the tree or the Fleetwood Mac concert, is something that I've only experienced in and through my mind, with all of those filters. Like everything that I think and feel, my thoughts and my feelings about the Mormon Church are my mind. And here's the most important part of this. If I hate the Mormon Church, I'm hating a part of my own mind. I'm essentially hating myself. If I love the Mormon Church, I'm loving a part of my own mind. I'm essentially loving myself. If I feel shame, guilt, or grief about the Mormon Church, I'm feeling shame, guilt, and grief about myself. In other words, I'm creating in my mind shame, guilt, grief, or fear, anger, or pride, or forgiveness, or love, or joy. And what is that aimed at? It's aimed at a portion of myself, at my own mind, that part of my mind that is acting as a very realistic symbol for something that exists in the outside world.
When this power begins to form, it might be likened to having a little factory in your body.
Now, Boyd K. Packer talked to us about little factories, but the mind is the ultimate little factory. And I want my ultimate little factory to produce love and kindness and charity, generosity, clarity, acceptance, truth. I want my mind to love reality for what it is and not be clouded by any kind of murky, distorted mind fog that's filtering reality. That's how I feel. Now, I cannot speak to Steve's experience. of the Mormon Church being the thing in the outside world that stripped away his spiritual curiosity. I'm glad that that spiritual curiosity came back, if it ever truly went away. So like I said, I really can't speak for Steve's experience. I can, however, relate to similar feelings that I've had. Because I've felt for a very long time that the Mormon Church is to blame, that the Mormon Church is what made me egotistical, is what made me think that I was better than others. Now, however, I don't believe it's fair or accurate to say it was the Mormon Church that did any of that to me. Instead, it was me doing that to myself. It was the way that I interpreted the messages of the Mormon Church, which is different from the way that other people interpret the messages of the Mormon Church. It was the way that I chose to respond to my perception of the Mormon Church, which is different than the way that other people respond to their perceptions of the Mormon Church. It was the way that I reacted to what I imagined the Mormon Church to be. It was the way that I interacted with my own mind, with myself. The way that I accepted some things and rejected others. The entire time, without being aware of it, I was accepting or rejecting only different pieces of my own mind. So what does that do for me now? It means that I don't want to hate any part of myself. What kind of person do I want to be? I want to be like Steve when he saw those beautiful lights, that beautiful psilocybin-fueled fireworks display happening within his mind, that natural Rorschach ink blot that his consciousness was focusing on, looking at that piece of his mind and recognizing something familiar there, associating that with the deep love and admiration that he has for his wife, recognizing all of the cloudy, murky confusion in his mind over the years that had kept him from seeing and appreciating her for who she truly is. Or perhaps rediscovering the deep love and admiration that he has for himself, for his own mind, and his own ability to create a perspective of deep love and admiration for his wife or for anything else that is beautiful in the world. That he could see that beauty and accept it rather than muting it with a distorting, filtering cloud of mind fog. I don't want to create more distorting mind fog within my own mind. My mind naturally creates enough distorting fog all on its own. So I'm kind of passionate about this. I hope that it makes sense to you. And I hope that you understand that anytime I push back on anyone who's complaining about the Mormon Church, or anything else really for that matter, I'm doing it from a desire to turn my own mind factory, and hopefully your mind factories as well, into joy-producing factories, appreciation-producing factories, gratitude-producing factories. Because I want to be like Jason Mraz. I want to look for the good. And I want to create joy through honest gratitude about even the most difficult experiences of life. So I want to end today's podcast with a Jason Mraz song. I've shared clips of it before. This is the song Gratitude, and it's at the end of his album that came out in June 2020, Look for the Good. I desire all to receive it.
I thank the boys who kicked my ass when I was 17. I thank the ones who chose to laugh and those who acted mean. I thank the bullies for all their scraps and accidents and then some. They shaped my life, they made me like who I've become. They shaped my life, they made me love who I am. I thank the girls who gave the hand and showed me how to dance. And I thank the ones who turned me down and never gave me a second chance. I learned that it's okay for hearts to go on their own way. They shaped my life, they made me like who I am today. They shaped my life, they made me love who I am. That's right, now I've got gratitude. Yes, I do. Gratitude. I've got gratitude. Yes, I do. Gratitude. for. I am grateful for deep breaths. I'm grateful for my health.
Grateful, grateful.
I know tomorrow is uncertain, and I know time is our greatest wealth. I am grateful for my teachers, and as many of them, they taught me how to follow my heart. They taught me that all of the world is a stage. They taught me life imitates art. I am grateful for my parents, and I'm grateful they divorced. When they divided, they multiplied it, and two parents became four.
Grateful, grateful.
And I am grateful for my fur friends, the ones that follow me around, singing meow, 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 meow. They remind me to slow down, to kneel and kiss the ground. I am grateful for music. It helps me feel understood.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful to gratitude itself.
Thank you.
It helps me look for the good.
Thank you.
Look for the good.
Thank you.
I look for the good. For the good.
Man, I love that song. I love the entire album. And I want to end this episode by letting you know that I am grateful to you, dear listener. Whoever you are, whatever it is that brought you here today, I'm grateful that you're interested enough in exploring your own reaction to the things that you hear on this podcast, that you take the time to listen to me, to listen to yourself, because this sound that you're hearing right now, this is your mind you're hearing. And this moment is one that you and I are creating together right now through this very interesting technology in this world that keeps bringing our human evolved minds closer to each other than they've ever been in the history of our species. I'm grateful for the growing pains I experience, the opportunities to learn who I am, what I want from life, and turn my mind into a powerful, joy-creating machine to put down the weapons that I use against myself. I don't need them anymore, and neither do you. Unless, of course, you think that you still do. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, that sounds really nice, Glenn. I'd like to be able to turn my mind to that same kind of joy-creating factory too, but I just don't know how. Well, you know how to get a hold of me. And I am a certified holistic life coach, so, just saying. And I hope that you'll tune in for part 2 of this conversation with Steve and Christine. You won't have to wait very long. Thank you again for listening to Infants on Thrones.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore.
Hey there, thanks for listening all the way to the end. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I have more to say about this topic, and I'm going to do that with a follow-up behind-the-scenes sharing time episode on Patreon. So, if you're in a position where you can throw me a few dollars each month to support the work that I put into creating this podcast, please come and support me on Patreon, where you'll also get access to additional content. Did you know that I also create sharing time episodes that are available only to Patreon subscribers? I've been doing that for a few years, so there's a lot of content there that you can have access to. So please come and support this podcast if you can. I greatly appreciate it.
Hi, This is Hillary.
Matthew. Ryan.
Carol.
Keith.
Ashley. And I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. Free fall, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep my actions elevated to compassionate heights. I'm walking past the fight, laying down on the